It's 115 students from around the globe sitting here in this room. 60% of you are international. There are 33 nations represented in this room. And those kind of mix of cultures create this very exhilarating, fascinating environment, but also very, very, very challenging for all of you. And I'm going to discuss about the personal, social, and academic aspects of being an international student here, starting with the personal. So I came from Israel 2.5 years ago to start this dual degree in journalism and business. And back home, I was a journalist, a senior editor in the second largest newspaper. And when I came here sitting in your seats, just like in a different building, I remember that I was like in this state of mind that is called shock. Now, I was in a total and complete shock. I was sitting right here, and I knew my name, I knew where I live, I knew what I have to do today and tomorrow, but everything was like kind of foggy. I was like walking in a cloud. I couldn't see it. It didn't feel like my life. Now, in retrospect, I realized that this is called culture shock. And while culture shock is experienced differently by different kinds of people, some things are still common, like sadness and loneliness and frustration and anxiety. And I had trouble concentrating at the beginning. And if that's not enough, I was also feeling left out and misunderstood. And eventually, I started to really hate Americans. For a good couple of months, I really hated Americans. And during that month, I was like, I couldn't deal with American students. I couldn't deal with domestic students. I was seeking the company of Israeli students because they were the ones I could relate to. They were the ones I could understand. And eventually, I developed like this extreme homesickness. I really, really wanted to go back home to mommy. It felt like this entire experience was a mistake. Now, I wasn't alone. 38% of the international students who are now in their second year say that they encounter symptoms of culture shock. Now, we asked this question after a year of school. So, in my opinion, this figure is at least double because people tend to undermine their difficulties as time goes by, especially people with big egos like us, right? So I'm sure there are like some international students sitting here in the crowd and that didn't attend international orientation saying, culture shock? Me? No way. I just arrived on Sunday, and I'm completely in love with everything. And that might be true, maybe because those people are in phase 1 of culture shock, which is called the honeymoon. I came to the US, and during the first weeks, I was in love with everything that I've seen. Everything. I mean, seriously, take a look at that. The view from the Empire State. Pretty nice, huh? Impressive. Or Central Park, love is in the air. Or my favorite place, the Brooklyn Bridge. Kind of a nice bridge, huh? So that was the honeymoon. I came to the US, I worked for years on my application. There was nothing more that I wanted than to come here and sit here at Columbia Business School. And when I was like, it was when I was seeing like all the skyscrapers and walking like in Central Park and everything, and the city is beautiful, I felt that like I've made it. I'm in the center of the world. It was a great feeling. But every good thing must come to an end. And when the honeymoon is over, starts phase 2, which is the what am I doing here phase. And during that phase, me and Miss America kind of had a big fight. And when I was walking down the streets, I wasn't in love anymore. I was actually feeling like this guy. This Israeli Borat. Everything became so hard. The hardest part for me was that I couldn't speak. I didn't have the vocabulary. And back in Israel, when I was a journalist, I was making a living out of words. And coming here, I lost my biggest skill, the ability to express myself the way I wanted. And when you cannot express yourself the way you want, you cannot sound smart, you cannot sound intelligent, you cannot sound funny, you cannot sound anything. But that was kind of the big thing. There were lots of little things that were kind of annoying. For example, the subway. What is uptown? What is downtown? How do you read a subway map? So many times I found myself in the wrong station, sometimes in the wrong borough, more than once. Dumb things like grocery shopping. You know, I couldn't find the food that I like. And when I finally did, it tasted really, really bad. Measurement, I mean, who invented the inches, right? And how heavy is 1 pound? And 30 degrees Fahrenheit, is it really hot or really cold, right? Coins. I mean, what is the dime, what is the nickel, what is the penny? And how come that the dime is smaller than the nickel? And how come they don't have numbers on them, right? It's the only country in the world that has no numbers on the coins. But what bothered me above everything, beyond comparison, was the Americans. The Americans, not the president. I found the Americans to be so positive all the time. Always happy, even if they had no reason to be. You know? I felt this kind of plastic that I could not communicate with them because I was not getting like the real answer from them. So, for example, if you go to the second-year students here at Columbia and you would ask them, how was your summer internship? Seriously, do it. Everybody would tell you I had an amazing summer internship, even if they really hated it. And so many times people said to me, hey, Dan, let's have lunch sometime. And I would never hear again. Ever. Which eventually led me to the conclusion that all Americans are fake. And when I thought that all Americans are fake, there was like kind of this halo effect. I was also sure that they are distant and insincere and hypocritical and superficial because they are fake. And if they're superficial and distant and insincere, they're probably artificial and overly programmed and flexible and naive and loud, you know? Bad taste in clothing, which is true. Now, you are laughing now, but for me, that period of time was very, very bad. I really, really wanted to go home. This entire experience looked like a mistake. You know, one of the strongest memories that I have from that period of time is that I lie in my bed just before going to sleep. And suddenly I feel the bed kind of shaking. And then kind of floats in the air and leaves my room through the open window and then flies east, crossing the ocean, crossing the Mediterranean, and lands in my old apartment in Tel Aviv. Now, that was a sweet dream. Now, around that time, you can see those little groups forming here at Columbia. Like the Mexicans with the Mexicans, the French with the French, the Dutch with the Dutch. And it doesn't really make culture shock disappear faster. But luckily, there's also phase 3, which is the last and final phase, and we call it, where is happy hour? So you can basically see me here wearing a dress and a wig and a mustache, fully immersed in the American culture. Now, what eventually made me adjust was understanding what we call the American phrase book. And I'll give you an example. For example, when an American used to ask me, how are you? How are you doing? I used to give like these long answers of what I was doing today and my plans for tomorrow because they were asking how was I doing. It took me time to understand that this is not a question. This is just hello. Now, question for you. When an American says, let's have lunch sometime, what's the meaning of that? What's the meaning of that?
Goodbye.
What?
Goodbye.
Yeah, it's like I'm just being polite, you know? Don't take your calendar out. You're not going to have lunch with that person. When an American says, I'll have to think about it, what's the meaning of that? No. Yeah, I thought about it. The answer is no. Right? When a professor tells you, you might want to consider doing X, what does the professor mean? I absolutely expect you to do X. When the same professor tells you you would want to do X, what's the difference? Where's the domestic students? It means do X now. When a professor returns a paper and says, that's an interesting paper, is it a good thing? It's a bad thing, right? I have nothing good to say about it. I thought it's a compliment at the beginning. I was getting like this interesting paper. I said, yes, Mom, I got an interesting paper. When a friend tells you, sounds great, 3 exclamation mark, lots of passion, enthusiasm, what's the meaning of that? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Everything, you should downgrade everything in the US, but at least like two levels. So if someone tells you it's not bad, what's the meaning of that? It is bad, right. And that's a great idea, but that's all but a great idea. So once I was able to understand the way Americans talk, the way they behave, the way of this culture to exist, are they really fake and insincere and hypocritical and everything? Eventually I realized that everything is just cultural. It was the way that my culture, which is very direct, perceived the American culture, which is less direct. Now, in your culture, the word fake can be different, because we all come from different countries and different words. But just remember, it is just the way you will perceive the American culture. We asked the international students how long until culture shock is over, and 26% said it was less than 1 month, 24% between 1 and 2 months, the majority, 27% between 3 and 4 months, and then we have 11% and 12%, 5 to 6, and more than 6 months. If you take a closer look at this slide, you can see that culture shock would last, on average, 1 semester, from now till April. So to sum up the culture shock part, say that the y-axis is your mood and the x-axis is time. International students are now here. Yesterday you went to the lighthouse, you were like eating well, then you play bowling and going drinking. We feed you, everything is nice, you like your peer advisors, right? But very soon, usually it happens when school's going to start, when the workload is going to be a bit more intense. Bam. And then going to be phase 2, but luckily afterwards, you're going to get adjusted back to phase 3, and that will take again, on average, by the end of the semester. A few tips of getting adjusted. The most important tip is to be patient. You're all here for a reason. You're all smart. You're all talented. You all faced difficult situations in your life before, I'm sure. The one thing you may not have is patience. And that's key here in getting adjusted, getting through culture shock. The second one is remember your personal goals. You all came here for a reason. You wanted this MBA. You know what it's going to give you back, in the future. So just remember your goals. Remember why you came here. That really helped me. See the adventure in it. When I kind of like on my bad days, I kind of like imagine that I'm like this Robinson Crusoe touring through this island and understanding the natives. It really helped me. Use your sense of humor. That's also key here. Deal with stress as it arises. Don't let stress accumulate. That's true for every period of time in life. You have the gym right here, and it works wonders. And lastly, ask for help if you need it. The peer advisors are here. The Student Academic Affairs is here. Chazen Institute is here. OSL, Office of Student Life. Everyone is here to help you. So just don't hesitate to ask for help. So that was the personal part. How about the social part? I told you that when I came to the US, I couldn't speak, but I also couldn't understand what other people are speaking because they were using so much slang and buzzwords. So I'm just going to give you like this example, like this sample conversation, which is based on real things that I heard or got in email. So it goes like this. What's up, partner in crime? I'm not too shabby. I want to see that movie for shizzle. I hear it's ill. I'll hit you again, but try to holler back, yo. Word? It's English. Any brave volunteer that wants to help me translate that? What's up, partner in crime? Yeah, it's like, how are you, my friend, right? What's I'm not too shabby? I'm not too bad, right? I want to see that movie for shizzle. For sure, yeah, I want to see that movie for sure. I hear it's ill. Great. I'll hit you again. Call you again. But try to holler back, yo. Call me back. And what's the meaning of word? Okay. Well done. So we asked the international students how easy or difficult was it to understand slang, idioms and buzzwords. And this is how they recall the situation was on the first month. So on the first month, 7% said it was very easy, 14% easy, 25% somewhat easy. The easy part is marked in blue. 4% said it was neutral, 17% somewhat hard, 13% hard, and 19% very hard. The hard part is marked in this kind of shade of red. So to sum up, 49%, half the students, half the international students, found it difficult to deal with slang, idioms, and buzzwords. That's a lot of people. After 1 year, take a look at this big improvement. Only 16% found it difficult, and 77% found it easy. So you just wait. Within 1 year, everything would make sense for you here. We also asked how easy or difficult was it to make new friends. And on the first month, 22%, 1 out of every 5 international students found it hard to make new friends here. Again, it's issues of language, it's issue of culture. However, on the last month, after 1 year, take a look at that. Only 5% found it difficult. 87% found it easy. That's a huge, huge, huge improvement. Now, you know, making friends with Americans is kind of like a huge, huge topic, and I'm just going to touch it. So let's say that this is me, and this is the American. So I found out that I'm able to make friends with the American once I was able to speak the language well. Again, I guarantee that every person in this room would be able to make friends with anyone once you will be comfortable speaking English. Now, the problem started when this American, let's call him Joe, used to bring his friends, okay? So we have Jeff and Jason and Jim and Jessica, right? Let's be politically correct. Politically correct. So when I was like hanging out with a group of Americans, the following thing usually used to happen. They would always talk about baseball or football or lots of other things that like fraternities, sororities, you name it, that I had no idea about. And it made me feel left out. So domestic students, beware. The academic experience here. So by now, you all know that about adhering to the honor code. You've heard that enough. Arrive on time to all classes, attend all classes, come prepared, don't leave classes while in session. Cheating and plagiarism are not allowed. Now, plagiarism is accepted in certain countries, not in the US. Plagiarism is when you use someone else's work without giving them credit. And the most important thing on this slide, which is relevant to international students, is that class participation is really, really important. Class participation in the US counts for minimum at 10%, and I had a class with a 50% grade for class participation. And this is something that's very hard for international students because usually it's a very American thing, class participation. In many countries in the world, you do not participate in class. Domestic students are very articulate, they're very fluent in class, they make smart remarks, they sound smart, you cannot sound as smart. So people tend not to participate as much. And this is a very challenging thing for international students. Now, there are two types of class participation. One is voluntary. The professor asks a question, you feel like answering, you raise your hand, and you answer. The second type is cold calling. Kenneth, what is cold calling?
Professor points you out and you have to respond.
Exactly. You don't feel like answering, but the professor will still ask you. Now, cold calling is very foreign to my culture. I mean, they do cold call on people in Israel, but only in elementary school. I was never cold call after junior high in Israel, and suddenly I had to adjust to this thing that I just sit in class, I don't want to participate, Why should you ask me? But I had to adjust. Now, the first time I was cold call on, I would never forget that. It was a finance class. And I was completely daydreaming. I was, at that time, probably thinking that imagining that my chair is kind of like raises in the air and leaves the classroom through the open window. And right before the chair was preparing for landing in Ben Gurion Airport, I see the professor in front of me asking me a question, and then I wake up. Now, I woke up, I just heard the end of the question, what is the ratio? And I had no idea what the question was. Everybody was looking at me. I was turning pale. The first time I'm call on and I don't even hear the question. And then I heard an angel in the back of my mind telling me the right answer. And when I looked back, it was actually a student telling the right answer. His name was also Dan, and he thought that the professor is talking to him. So miracles do happen at Columbia. We asked the student how comfortable were you participating in class discussions, and on the first month you see that everything is kind of like equally distributed. Equally distributed, with 36%, more than a third of the international students saying it was hard, and it is hard. Look the situation after 1 year. Only 13% said it was difficult. So take a look at this huge improvement in a very easy part, from 14% to 41%. That's a huge improvement. It's something that can really be worked on. We also asked the students how easy or difficult was it to follow the professor in class. The first month, 14% found it difficult. And after 1 year, only 8%. But take a look at the very easy part, from 33 to 61. Now, by now, you also met your learning team, and you know that it's a very different bunch of people that you're working with in terms of culture, background, style, goals, different levels of competitiveness. We asked the students how comfortable were you working with your learning team, and on the first month, 26%, a quarter of the students weren't comfortable. A quarter is a lot of people. Again, issues of language, issues of culture, different goals. After 1 year, only 7% weren't comfortable. And take a look at that. 87% thought it was easy. How easy or difficult was it to express yourself in writing, which is an important part of group assignments? The first month, 19% found it difficult. Last month, 7%. And take a look again at the very easy part. It's a huge, huge improvement. To sum up, you should realize that if you're human, culture shock will occur. And it will last probably a full semester. The second thing you should realize is that you must give yourself time to adjust to a new social environment here. And must adjust to understanding all the slang and idioms that would come with time. The third thing is expect a different learning experience, and by now I think you're kind of getting the sense of it. And the fourth part is that things gradually improve. Every day will be better in terms of adjustment than the day before. And you should always, always ask for advice if you need it. There's only one thing that I want you to take from this presentation, only one thing, and that is to be patient. Again, you're all smart, you're all talented, you're all here for a reason. The only thing you may not have is patience to go through this process. And I guarantee you that once you have the patience, you'll be very, very successful here. Now, this is my kind of last words of wisdom, because I'm graduating next month. I'm a dual degree, so I have one less semester of business school. For me, it has been the most amazing experience of my life. I know that you've heard that a lot. You know, business school is the best 2 years of your life. It is. Just challenge yourself. Make every day count here. Because what you put in is what you get. And I wish you the best of luck. And I'll see you around tomorrow.